I think the thing that we see as being kind of a huge differentiator is kind of what they call hashed audiences. So taking attributes of your own customers on the CRM side, be it names, phone numbers, email addresses, et cetera, and being able to go and upload that in an anonymized fashion within Amazon's DSP, and then match that against consumers that Amazon is able to recognize based on their profiles, and then being able to reach those users too. And then exactly to your point, layering on the actual behavioral signals of the in-market lifestyle or the custom ASIN audiences on top of your first party data to actually create a little more curated of a segment is all things that you can do through Amazon's DSP.
Welcome to E-Commerce Deep Dive, the show where we explore e-commerce business strategy and the future of shopping online. Your host is John Ghiorso, founder and CEO of Orca Pacific, a full-service agency dedicated to growing brands on Amazon. Every week, John talks shop with the biggest players in retail and e-commerce. In this episode, John chats with Nich, Senior Manager of Partnership Development at MightyHive, the leading data and digital media consultancy. Nich breaks down display advertising strategies using Amazon's demand-side platform. He and John discuss how endemic versus non-endemic brands can utilize the ad tactic to target audiences with relevant display ads. They also touch on new ad inventory through OTT and Twitch. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Nich, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'd be great for our audience just to start a little bit with your background and what you're up to today.
Yeah, awesome. So again, for everyone tuning in, my name is Nich. I am a senior partner manager looking after e-commerce partnerships at MightyHive. And for those that don't know who MightyHive is a data and digital media consultancy who recently merged with Orca Pacific to kind of bring forward comprehensive marketing and advertising services for brands and marketers. For the better half of, or not even better half, just for the better part of 2.5 years, I've been really working on building out MightyHive's global Amazon partnership, primarily looking at the Amazon advertising side of the house, but also now connecting with Orca Pacific really closely to kind of figure out how all the pieces of the pies connect to really bring a comprehensive strategy for brands on Amazon and off Amazon.
Awesome. Nich, you are one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met when it comes to Amazon DSP. So I'm excited to get into some of the detail here. The DSP comes up a lot of brands are using it. One of the distinctions that I know MightyHive makes is this kind of distinction between endemic and non-endemic. Just tell me kind of how you look at that, what that actually means, if you could just define that term kind of for our audience and go from there.
Totally. And endemic and non-endemic, kind of outside of the context of Amazon, means a whole different thing, right? But within the Amazon walls, endemic refers to any brand that actually sells or promotes their products on Amazon. So kind of any kind of, let's say, CE company, even fashion that sells on Amazon, et cetera, would be considered endemic. And so for any brand or company that doesn't sell their products on Amazon, think about verticals like financial services, telco, et cetera. Those would be considered non-endemic. And I think when a lot of people think about Amazon advertising, the immediate intuition is that Amazon advertising is only for endemic brands. But what we've seen in terms of kind of adoption and growth across our own portfolio is that Amazon DSP provides benefits not only for the endemic brands, but also for non-endemic brands too, primarily through kind of the same unique selling propositions, be it the audience, be it the inventory, be it even the measurement in some cases. So I think for us, that's been kind of a huge lesson learned, at least from the beginning of our partnership with Amazon, is to really kind of find the application and utility for Amazon kind of for more than just endemic brands, but also for the non-endemic side too.
So we'll get into the endemic side because obviously huge opportunity there. But on the non-endemic side, let's say it's a bank is launching a new credit card. What are some practical use cases? What are they getting out of Amazon DSP that they're not getting out of other DSPs or programmatic options today?
Yeah. And I think just to kind of start that question off, just kind of level setting with kind of what they are getting consistently across kind of other third-party DSPs too, is typically inventory, with the exception of Amazon's owned and operated, right? So Amazon.com, which again, will be eligible for some non-endemics and also uneligible for some non-endemics as well. So that kind of is the differentiating factor when it comes to the inventory side of the house. But ultimately kind of what really drives value for the non-endemics, that kind of is the differentiator between Amazon DSP and say other third-party DSPs is ultimately the data. So Amazon provides kind of in-market and lifestyle segments, but also kind of custom Amazon audiences referred to as ASIN audiences. So Amazon Standard Identification Number. for these non-endemics to kind of curate their own audience that would be really applicable based on their shopping and browsing behavior to kind of the audience they're trying to reach. So even with credit cards, actually, there's an interesting audience that Amazon can create based on the actual credit card provider that an Amazon customer has associated to their billing profile. So in that example specifically, it's information that Amazon has on their consumers that they can go ahead and aggregate and activate as an audience opportunity that really does drive forward both performance, but also reach in a way that, say, some other third-party DSPs can't provide.
Got it. So when you talk about ASIN targeting, so what we're really talking about here is targeting somebody for a service, for a product that is not sold on the platform, something like a car, where you can tie it to kind of specific shopping behavior. Maybe, for example, if people know that, or if the bank knows that people sign up for a credit card oftentimes right when they move, so they want to target an audience that just bought moving boxes and packaging tape and whatever else you buy when you move, and they can kind of take that audience based on their actual shopping browsing behavior on the platform and then target a theoretically unrelated but related in terms of behavior product. Is that a decent example of a use case?
Absolutely. And I think even in the ways that Amazon offers those audiences, so that example with kind of recent movers, that is actually an available Amazon audience that's preset. But say, for instance, you want more granularity and control as to kind of which products were actually included from a browsing and shopping perspective into that one audience, you can now actually create individual audiences by selecting kind of groupings of products to actually create your own custom audience. That way, if you have a preferred, and it's kind of a weird example, preferred like moving box company or a moving tape, you can then kind of create an audience that is custom to that, as opposed to kind of the preset audiences that Amazon already creates for you.
Got it. Makes sense. And then can you overlay other data, say, demographic data, regional data, say you want to target those people that are about to move, but only in the Southwest, if you're regional offer or something like that. Is that possible?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that speaks ultimately to the value of programmatic, right? Is really being able to leverage different data signals to kind of really customize and curate your own media strategy. So alongside kind of the demographic data, you can also leverage your own first party data and kind of modeling that Amazon does, even with lookalike algorithms. And when it comes to first party data, there's kind of a whole treasure trove of options that Amazon provides to brands, both endemic and non-endemic. I think the thing that we see as being kind of a huge differentiator is kind of what they call hashed audiences. So taking attributes of your own customers on the CRM side, be it names, phone numbers, email addresses, et cetera, and being able to go and upload that in an anonymized fashion within Amazon's DSP, and then match that against consumers that Amazon is able to recognize based on their profiles, and then being able to reach those users too. And then exactly to your point, layering on the actual behavioral signals of the in-market lifestyle or the custom ASIN audiences on top of your first party data to actually create a little more curated of a segment is all things that you can do through Amazon's DSP.
Awesome. Yeah, obviously super powerful. Let's pivot a little bit to the endemic side, but I want to stay on this topic of targeting. So just for clarification here, endemic would be someone who's actually selling a product on Amazon, mostly consumer product. Also, certainly some industrial products are being sold. So for a consumer product brand, when they're thinking about targeting, when they're thinking about strategies on Amazon, kind of using this targeting, what are some of the things that are working really well right now that maybe go beyond kind of the 101 targeting that has been done in the past?
Yeah, so I can kind of take that in a few different approaches. I think the thing that we always emphasize and kind of stress with our clients is kind of this concept of a concentric circle. So for us, at the middle of that concentric circle that you should always build your strategy around is going to be your first party data. So from a non-endemic perspective, you obviously have, if you are kind of present in your own D2C site, you have pixel-based audiences. On the Amazon side with the ASIN audiences themselves, you can actually create retargeting segments based on your own products that you want to kind of create audiences around. And from there, you kind of build out, right? So again, you have Amazon in-market segments, you have Amazon lifestyle segments. Amazon also ports in really interesting additional data signals too across its other properties. So Amazon Autos is actually something that is really building out. And again, not as pertinent for every single brand, but it's also something that people can kind of rotate in depending on kind of their audience or demographic. Other things that we're definitely seeing kind of come together all together is things like Prime Video. So in terms of actually being able to curate audiences based on viewing behavior that a user might have on something like Prime Video is definitely huge. And again, you can kind of insinuate as to kind of what's going to come down the pike as well in terms of Amazon being able to kind of create audiences based off its other properties that would be valuable to a brand that sometimes you even forget. So something that was recently announced actually was the ability to activate Twitch audiences. And again, that's somewhat in limited availability depending on how you work with Amazon. But that's obviously something that I think for a lot of consumers, they kind of forgot that Twitch is a part of Amazon. But now that we have that kind of connection point, you're going to start to see a lot more integrations, not only from an audience perspective, but also from an inventory perspective, which I think a lot of our clients are very excited about. So I guess just to kind of refocus that back into your question, I think from an audience perspective, you obviously have kind of the foundational ones that you would always think about, the in-market, ASIN, and then also the lifestyle audiences. But I think really kind of weaving in some of the custom audiences that Amazon's building across its integrations definitely will be critical to kind of a brand testing out new strategies as it kind of keeps on going.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, I think the obvious, when people think of kind of the first party data on Amazon, I think they first and foremost think about shopping behavior. What am I buying? What am I browsing? What am I looking at? What am I putting in my cart? And obviously you can kind of infer a lot about someone's behavior based on what they're purchasing or looking at. But I think these other kind of behaviors are also super interesting, like media consumption. How granular can you get there? If you're, let's say you're selling, fishing gear, can you target people watching fishing shows? What about a specific fishing show? I mean, how granular can you get? And is there kind of a point of diminishing returns? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think in its current state, it's limited to genre. So not necessarily a specific title or a show. But I would imagine kind of in the same way that Amazon rolled out its in-market audiences and kind of trickled down to kind of the specific ASIN targeting, we might see something similar on the kind of media streaming side too. I think for the time being, I think always with programmatic anyways, you always want to kind of test and learn. So I think the ability for you to actually report on individual audience performance is definitely kind of key in making those decisions as to kind of determining whether or not there is kind of that trade-off in granularity and kind of more broadness. So again, granularity, if you have a specific audience you're trying to reach, obviously that might correlate to better performance. But again, performance is typically traded off with scale. So depending on which of those is kind of more of a priority for you. And obviously there's kind of a balance between that. Yeah. That's ultimately kind of what you need to figure out for yourself. And that I think there's not a one size fits all strategy for every brand. But Amazon has been releasing a lot more reporting capabilities that give you that granularity of data that then inform your decisioning as to how you consistently optimize your campaign, add new audiences, broaden the scope, et cetera.
Yeah, makes sense. So, I mean, with my fishing example, I'm being incredibly kind of obvious about the connection. There's lots of kind of less obvious connections there. A lot of maybe, things that have worked with other platforms that, the brand knows this audience tends to kind of match up with our core consumer. So your recommendation is like, you may not know that, people that watch sitcoms tend to buy your makeup brand, but you have a pretty good idea that there's a big kind of overlap. So test that and then see where it goes. Is that maybe a more realistic kind of example?
Yeah, and even I think kind of keying into kind of one of the things you just noted there, overlap insights is also something that we found to be incredibly valuable in Amazon's DSP. So exactly to that point, the audience that you have, although you have kind of a key demographic that you've identified, an audience profile, if you will, that's not to say that your audience also isn't consuming other types of media, nor are they not buying different kinds of products. So Amazon is allowing you that insight in terms of this is the audience that you've identified as being your core demographic, but let's also give you additional insights of those users, but also then illuminate who other customers you might have that you didn't even kind of identify as being your core consumer set. So I think that's kind of the iteration that we see across our clients in terms of discovering new audiences, discovering new customers. And then I think even with the ability to target those subsets of users, being able to then align your own media strategy, but also creative strategy with that. So again, even if you don't necessarily have the granularity of say a show, but you have a genre, you can then kind of co-opt your own ad creative to be more aligned, not necessarily from a native format perspective, but just like fit for the actual environment that you're seeing that. So if it's an OTT ad and you're kind of disrupting a video view for a commercial break, you ideally want that to be as seamless as possible, right? So perhaps having a video creative that aligns to the content that you're actually showing and targeting against, which we find to be obviously driving the best performance.
Yeah, that makes sense. With Twitch, is it the same kind of concept where, kind of broad-based audience segmentation based on behaviors kind of on the Twitch platform, or is it really more about the inventory on the Twitch platform itself? Like which is more kind of interesting or important?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, a lot of people, or a lot of clients rather, have been asking for Twitch inventory. And again, you can do
Yeah.
so directly with Twitch through deals. But I think a lot of people have been waiting for the direct integration of Twitch inside of Amazon advertising solutions. So that's not to say that the data isn't valuable either, or hasn't been of interest to our clients. But I think the inventory, for the most part, has been kind of the most wish listy item, if you will.
Got it.
That said, as Amazon rolls out integrations across all of its owned and operated properties, it typically takes kind of a sequenced event approach. So what I mean by that is currently Twitch inventory, depending on kind of your market or locale, is basically determined by either you work with Amazon directly on it for now, and then in the future, we should see it actually roll into what we call the self-service DSP, or being able to activate that through your partner, through your agency, or also directly with Amazon too.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I know that Twitch audiences is typically a hard kind of demo to get in front of.
Totally.
So yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned kind of this self-service concept. My perspective is there's still a lot of confusion out there about what is managed service, what is self-service. I'm a brand. I used to work with AMG. That didn't go great. That was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Should I try this again? Like, I have an Amazon ad salesperson that's talking to me, but I also have an agency. Like, talk to me about that. How should brands who have these different options, like, just what is the actual framework? What is kind of the state of the industry today? And how should brands be thinking about this and approaching it?
Yeah, and this is a question that we field a lot, so hopefully I'll do it justice. But with any other kind of technology partners, kind of development of their own advertising program, to your point, Amazon's definitely kind of developed a lot of progress in terms of kind of streamlining as many options as possible. So from AMG to AAP to now Amazon DSP, in its current state, right, a brand can work with Amazon in two ways in its simplest form, either directly on a managed service basis or self-service. So with Amazon Direct Services, it's typically kind of transacted on a managed service IO. You kind of work out what your objectives are relative to KPIs, relative to inventory, relative to audiences. And Amazon then creates kind of a media plan for you based on those goals and kind of runs that campaign on your behalf. Say, for instance, you want a little more control, you want a little more customization when it comes to your approach on the DSP. You can then work with Amazon on a self-service basis. And within self-service, there's also kind of two routes there. Either you are large enough, so to speak, to actually work with Amazon directly on a self-service basis. There's no intermediary for you to actually access their platform. You kind of just do it. You get the keys to the car and you go for it. Or hypothetically, if you need kind of a little more support and understanding programmatic, how it fits into your overall strategy, you do also have the opportunity to work through kind of what they call their preferred partners, of which Mighty Hive and Orca Pacific are two of them. We're kind of one right now. So with that in particular, the partners are really there to kind of be the conduit between you and activation on Amazon's platforms. So with that, partners kind of offer more bespoke services, a lot more training and education, but also access to the data itself. So that's also kind of the key distinction is with Amazon's managed services, you get robust and comprehensive reporting at the end of the campaign, but you don't actually necessarily get access to a platform nor have ownership of that data. Whereas when you work with Amazon on a self-service basis, either directly or through a partner, you actually have access to your own data, can actually go within the platform, et cetera. So I think those are kind of the key differentiators as to kind of, let's say like a decision tree to kind of determine where you want to go or how you want to access the platforms. But yeah, hopefully that summary kind of makes sense.
No, I think that's well laid out. I mean, and obviously we're both a little bit biased here, right? So, but trying to be as objective as possible. I think for most brands, they kind of have two of those three options, which is they can use an agency or they can use managed service. Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong, but unless you already have basically an internal agency or really sophisticated internal programmatic team, you're not going to want to deal with DSP on your own. It's just totally. You're not going to have the folks on your team to be able to activate that in an effective way. Hey everyone, John here. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I wanted to give you a quick message and let you know that this episode is sponsored by Orca Pacific. Orca Pacific is a full-service agency with an exclusive focus on Amazon. We have capabilities in really everything a brand would need to succeed on the platform. Everything from advertising to content development and SEO, merchandising, marketing, you name it, as it relates to driving and converting demand on the platform. We have a robust suite of services on the back end related to operations, forecasting, FBA, demand planning, etc. And we do a lot on the higher level strategic elements of the platform. So think long-term planning, key negotiations, access to new and beta programs, anything and everything that has to do with accelerating a brand on the Amazon platform. If you want to hear more about what we do, please visit our website at www.orcapac.com. A salesperson will get in touch with you and we can talk more about how we can accelerate your brand on the platform. With that being said, we'll get back to the show. But talk to me a little bit more about why a brand would go work directly with Amazon for kind of the managed service option, and why potentially they would use an agency.
Yeah, and I think even in some cases, right, we kind of see like a hybrid approach in that for certain portions of an execution, they'll actually go with Amazon managed, and then for others, they'll kind of leverage the self-service DSP. And for the managed portion of the buy, that's kind of the benefit, obviously, of working with Amazon directly, is that you get a lot more access relative to placements, relative to inventory. Everything that comes out in terms of beta and alpha always becomes available on Amazon managed first, and then kind of rolls into self-service DSP later. So even Twitch, as an example, is currently available through Amazon's managed service, but not through the self-service routes. So I think that's kind of where we see the trade-off. And I think speaking kind of to the self-service DSP value, it really does come in the form of ownership and data access. So it really kind of depends on what you're looking to kind of run campaigns with Amazon across, and then determining kind of in a matrix, what can you actually accomplish through self-service DSP or managed service DSP, and kind of what value you're extracting from there. But ultimately, partners are generally in lockstep communication with Amazon, working to best strategize kind of what's going to be best for the brand. It's not necessarily kind of a binary, you do this or you do that. It's kind of really trying to figure out what's going to work best for you in coordination with Amazon ultimately.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's talk about, do you want to talk about OTT a little bit? If you could,
my favorite topic.
Okay, good. Maybe start at just at a high level, Nich, for folks that aren't as familiar with the OTT concept, maybe spend more of their time just in a traditional kind of retail or e-commerce environment. What is OTT? How should consumer product brands be thinking about it? And how does it work on Amazon?
Yeah, so over the top. So OTT kind of represents inventory of, let's say, the cord cutters, right? So when you think about television nowadays, the likelihood that a consumer is kind of across the cable box as opposed to kind of either a connected TV or a smart TV is kind of fluctuating, right? So I think with the even COVID accelerating certain digital trends, we're seeing a lot of consumers kind of shift towards kind of this OTT environment. Say, for instance, smart TV devices or connected TV devices such as Fire TV, Roku, Apple TV, etc. Those are all kind of examples of that. And we're finding more and more, kind of especially in this time, we're able to kind of reach a lot more users in terms of incremental reach across OTT right now, especially with a lot of the cord cutting that is happening. So with Amazon in particular, when you think about OTT and their offering, you think about Fire TV. So the device that they actually own, which then kind of plugs into kind of their advertising ecosystem, where brands are actually able to leverage Amazon DSP to run advertisements on Fire TV to kind of reach users on their TVs or kind of even desktops, mobile, et cetera, whatever they're kind of using to kind of view that Fire TV. So with that said, there's a lot of opportunities in kind of leveraging Amazon's DSP for that. And kind of the primary value propositions we usually kind of key in on there are things related to addressability, supply, in addition to measurement. So given that with Fire TV in particular, it's an owned device by Amazon that requires Amazon consumers to actually sign onto their Amazon profile in order to actually access Fire TV. That gives Amazon the ability actually to leverage its identity graph across multiple devices, be it your mobile, be it your desktop, be it your Fire TV, even now, to actually be able to reach your audiences in a way that a lot of other technologies aren't able to do, and that they don't own both kind of the device themselves in addition to kind of the advertising identity graph. So that's generally kind of a huge value proposition that brands are able to kind of really take advantage of through Amazon, is being able to reach not only their first party audiences, but also the Amazon audiences in a whole new format that's super kind of high impact. So typically 99% viewability, 99% view and completion rate, et cetera. So definitely an engaged audience overall that you have access to. And also kind of with Fire TV being exclusive to Amazon, having kind of the majority of inventory kind of available to your access. And then from a measurement perspective, kind of related to the addressability. Once someone actually does watch a video, say on the Fire TV OTT format, you can then attribute that video view back into on-site activity. So say, for instance, I see an ad on my TV, that's an OTT ad, and then go back onto my mobile app, start browsing on Amazon for a product that was just advertised in that video. Amazon's DSP is actually able to measure and attribute back that video view to the actual activity that I have on my mobile device, just based on the fact that they have the same identity graph. And so while typically Amazon OTT or OTT in general isn't meant to be kind of a performance driving channel, it can still be kind of used to measure kind of the uplift or impact that it's still having on your overall advertising. So I think that's kind of a really key distinction for OTT in particular. And I think just based on some of the trends, obviously with acceleration of viewership, we're seeing increased supply, especially as we head into Q4. But obviously Q4 being a very highly competitive time for spending overall. It is something that brands should be thinking about in their overall strategies, kind of how they want to approach it. And not to kind of go in more rabbit holes here, but Amazon also is creating kind of custom formats that are specifically geared for OTT. So even integrations with Alexa and specific ads, calls to actions, et cetera, that are really interesting and really innovative, that I think we see Amazon kind of looking at OTT viewership in a way that's a little more different than kind of the typical super upper funnel, super branding focused. Being able to leverage certain templates that kind of show certain product listings depending on kind of different endemic brand, but also kind of, as I mentioned earlier, kind of weaving in things like Alexa, calls to action to actually see a product or have Alexa kind of review something for you, et cetera. So we're seeing all the touch points kind of come together there. But OTT is definitely something that Amazon is investing a lot of efforts inside of and seeing a lot of success with.
Yeah, I mean, that's super interesting. You know, I would, unless I'm just missing something, Amazon must be the only platform that can connect something kind of, you know, very high funnel in OTT all the way down to an actual purchase within the same kind of walled garden with that same customer account. I mean, they're just in a unique position as a retailer and you know, a big kind of media platform as well. So,
yeah,
you know, how do brands, how do they get access to OTT, to this inventory right now?
So it's in the same way that we kind of talked about kind of the bifurcation of the access. You can do it through Amazon managed services. And with Amazon's managed services, you also do have access to kind of some more exclusive placements. So there's some homepage display placements that you have only kind of exclusive access through managed services right now. But the broader swath of inventory, kind of the in-stream videos, et cetera, you can get that through the self-service DSP too. So activating through a partner, such as Mighty Hive, Orca Pacific, et cetera. So that's easily accessible right now through the DSP. But again, certain placements, be it the homepage, display units, et cetera, are kind of available only on Amazon managed services.
Cool. That's great. Anything else, Nick, that you want to cover that you think our audience would be interested to learn about?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the sexiest subject necessarily, but I think it's worth noting. And I think for a lot of kind of, I guess, the last few years, Amazon's been investing a lot in terms of the usability of its platform. And really kind of building out the infrastructure overall to kind of lead itself to kind of a seamless experience overall. So I think we've seen a lot of improvements and advancements with things like their API. So be it on the reporting side, but also the campaign management side, in addition to kind of a beta that was just released by the name of Bulk Sheets. So kind of having scaled operations as it relates to campaign creation, campaign management, which again, to some extent brings it to parity with a lot more kind of third-party DSPs. But I know that to be kind of a pain point for a lot of marketers initially when Amazon rolled out their platform. But we're seeing kind of a lot of improvements being made pretty rapidly, which is great to see.
Yeah, I mean, what does that ultimately mean? Obviously, it's helpful for agencies. What does that ultimately mean for brands?
It means a lot more efficiency, I think. So I think when you think about the kind of trade-off between having an in-house team versus kind of outsourcing it externally, being able to kind of be technology forward in terms of automation, efficiencies, et cetera, kind of gain a lot of benefits to the actual brands themselves. That said, hypothetically, if you don't have necessarily kind of an engineering team internally that can kind of really build tools on top of that, Amazon has like a full directory of obviously partners that are kind of the tool providers too, which ultimately can provide you with ways in which you can kind of streamline your workflows, and have also integrations with other platforms too in a more seamless manner. So I think it's just kind of improving usability ultimately leads to just kind of more efficiency overall for your teams. So it's not kind of these same manual tasks over and over.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. Good. Well, usually I ask our guests to kind of plug their services. That seems a bit self-serving in this case. So maybe I'll say, Nich, how do people get a hold of you? Do you connect with people on LinkedIn? What's the best way to find out kind of more about your ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. So just Nich, I believe it's Nich Seo, but long is Nicholas Seo. Or over email is totally fine as well. So it's just NICH at mightyhive.com. And just a quick little plug there. I do spell Nich with an H, not a K, because Nich is short for Nicholas ultimately, and it's not Nicholas. So I've gone ahead and gone with NICH as a child and kind of stuck with me since. So, so in short, yeah, LinkedIn or email directly also works.
Awesome. We'll throw that in the show notes as well. Nich, thanks for being on.
Awesome. Thanks, John.